Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at pregnancy wellness from maybe a slightly different angle.
Oh, how so?
Well, instead of just focusing on everything, you should be adding, the vitamins, the healthy foods, all that.
Right, the usual checklist.
Exactly. We're going to dig into the things that might be really crucial to stop doing, sort of the overlooked half of the equation.
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in accumulation mode, more supplements, more kale.
Right. But sometimes taking things away is actually the most powerful move you can make for a healthy pregnancy.
Especially those habits that might be deeply ingrained.
Yeah, so you're probably already doing great things. You've got the prenatals, you're trying to eat well, maybe getting some walks in.
All positive steps.
But what if the real key, or at least a major key, lies in consciously cutting out certain things? Unlearning some habits, maybe, especially right at the start.
That makes a lot of sense. The instinct is often to add, to nurture by giving more.
Feels proactive, doesn't it?
It does. But starving something, especially if it's a default behavior, requires a different kind of intention, yet it can be incredibly impactful, particularly in the first trimester.
And that first trimester. Wow. It's just such a critical period, isn't it?
Absolutely fundamental.
You've got major organs forming, the neural tube, the very beginnings of the brain, and spinal cord.
Developing at an incredible pace.
And often, this is all happening before you even know for sure that you're pregnant.
Precisely. That biological clock is ticking really fast from conception. There's not a lot of wiggle room when it comes to avoiding potential harm right at the beginning.
It's like that analogy you mentioned, trying to build a house on a shaky foundation.
Yeah, exactly. You can add the best materials later, but if the base isn't solid because of ongoing harmful exposures, the whole structure is compromised.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those potential foundation cracks. Things to really consider stopping, especially early on. First up, smoking and vaping. We know it's bad, generally, but specifically in pregnancy.
Oh, the evidence here is just overwhelming. Stopping smoking is probably one of the single biggest positive changes someone can make.
What are the direct risks we're talking about?
We're looking at significantly increased risks for things like low birth weight, which can cause problems down the line. Also, premature birth, miscarriage, and even stillbirth. It's serious.
And secondhand smoke, is that just as bad?
It's a major factor, too, absolutely. The harmful chemicals cross over, so being exposed to someone else's smoke still puts the baby at risk. It's not just about the person who's pregnant smoking themselves.
Right. Okay. That's clear. What about alcohol? This seems like another area with a very firm line.
It really is. The consensus now is that there's simply no known safe amount of alcohol to drink during pregnancy. None.
At any stage? Or is it mainly the first trimester again?
It impacts development throughout the entire pregnancy. The brain and central nervous system are constantly developing. Alcohol exposure can interfere with that process at any point.
Wow. And consequences can be significant.
Very. Prenatal alcohol exposure is actually the leading preventable cause of developmental disabilities in Canada. That can mean lifelong physical, cognitive, and behavioral challenges. It's profound.
Leading preventable cause.
Yeah.
That really lands, doesn't it?
It should. It highlights how crucial avoidance is.
Okay. Then there's cannabis. This feels like, well, maybe there's more public uncertainty here. What does the science suggest?
Yeah, the understanding is still evolving compared to alcohol or tobacco, but the main concern is THC, the psychoactive compound.
Right.
It definitely crosses the placenta. Research suggests potential links to things like lower birth weight and possible effects on brain development.
Effects that might show up later?
Potentially, yes, like learning or behavioral issues down the road. So because the brain is so vulnerable during development, the recommendation is definitely to avoid it. Better safe than sorry, essentially.
Makes sense. Okay, let's switch to something most of us use daily: caffeine. The morning coffee ritual. Do we need to give that up completely?
Haha. The million-dollar question for many. Thankfully, no, not usually completely.
Sure.
The general guideline is to limit your intake. Keep it under 200 milligrams a day.
And what does that look like practically?
It's about one standard 12-ounce cup of brewed coffee, roughly. But you have to remember other sources, too. Tea, some sodas, chocolate, even some headache medications contain caffeine.
Ah, right. So it's about the total daily amount.
Exactly. Just being mindful of all the sources throughout the day.
Got it. Okay, moving from substances to food, it's not just about eating well, but avoiding certain things because of infection risks, right?
That's correct. The main concerns are infections like listeriosis and toxoplasmosis.
Which can be harmful to the baby.
Yes, they can cause serious developmental problems or complications. So the advice is mainly around avoiding foods that might carry these bacteria or parasites.
Like what, specifically?
Things like raw or undercooked seafood, so sushi is often a no-go unless it's fully cooked.
Mm.
Unpasteurized dairy products like certain soft cheeses, and deli meats, cold cuts, ham, turkey slices, unless they're heated until they're steaming hot. That kills any potential listeria.
So that quick cold sandwich might need rethinking.
Or just heating the meat first. It's about minimizing those specific risks.
Okay, that's helpful. So we've covered some key things to avoid substances, certain foods. But pregnancy also involves navigating just a ton of advice, doesn't it? And sometimes that advice is, well, frankly, outdated.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge challenge. Moving beyond just stopping the obviously harmful things, you enter this realm of information overload. And yes, sorting the good current advice from the old myths is critical.
Because following outdated advice could actually be risky.
It definitely could. It might lead you to avoid something beneficial or continue something that's now understood to be less than ideal.
Let's talk specifics. Medications and supplements seem like a minefield. You see things marketed for pregnancy.
Right, and it's easy to assume they're all safe and necessary, but that's really not the case.
What's the best approach then?
Talk to your doctor or midwife about everything, seriously. Every single thing you take or are thinking of taking. That includes over-the-counter meds like pain relievers or allergy pills, and definitely natural health products or supplements.
Even the natural stuff.
Especially the natural stuff sometimes. Natural doesn't automatically mean safe during pregnancy. Some herbs or high-dose vitamins can be harmful. Your healthcare provider needs the full picture. Supplements aren't always beneficial either. Some might not be needed or could even interfere with other things.
That's such a crucial message. Always check. What about exercise? I feel like the advice here has done a complete 180.
It really has, thankfully. The old advice was often take it easy, sometimes even strict bed rest, which we now know can often do more harm than good.
Right, I remember reading stories about women being told not to lift anything or get their heart rate up.
Exactly. But current guidelines actively encourage regular, moderate exercise for most healthy pregnancies. Of course, with modifications as needed.
And there are real benefits.
Definitely. Things like better weight management, fewer backaches, reduced risk of gestational diabetes, even potentially lowering the risk of postpartum depression. It's incredibly beneficial for both parent and baby. Sticking to outdated don't move advice means missing out on all of that.
It's quite a shift. Even sleep position advice has changed, hasn't it? Particularly later on.
Yes. For the third trimester, the recommendation, certainly from the NHS and others, is to sleep on your side.
Left side specifically or either side?
Either side is generally considered much better than sleeping on your back. The idea is that side sleeping improves blood flow and therefore oxygen supply to the baby. It's a simple change that seems to reduce the risk of stillbirth in late pregnancy.
Even for naps?
Yes. The advice usually applies to any sleep period in the third trimester, night or day.
Fascinating. Simple, but potentially very impactful. Now, our sources also mentioned cultural practices pregnancies handled so differently around the world.
It really is. There's a huge diversity of traditions, beliefs, and practices surrounding pregnancy and birth. Many are incredibly supportive and beneficial.
But some might conflict with current medical advice.
Sometimes, yes. Some traditional practices might involve dietary restrictions or recommendations that aren't aligned with modern nutritional science, or perhaps discourage certain medical checks. It's about finding a balance, respecting cultural heritage, while also considering the evidence-based guidelines from health organizations that are focused on safety and optimal outcomes.
It's a complex interplay.
Very much so.
And then, almost counterintuitively, after all this talk about evidence and guidelines, there's this advice to trust your instincts.
Yes. It might sound contradictory, but it's actually a really important piece of the puzzle, and something bodies like the NHS explicitly mention.
What does that mean in practice?
It means paying attention to your body. If something feels off, if you have a nagging feeling that something isn't right, even if you can't quite put your finger on it, don't ignore it. Talk to your healthcare provider.
So it's a validation of that inner knowing.
Exactly. It's a recognition that the pregnant person often has a unique and sensitive awareness of their own body and the baby's well-being. Sometimes intuition can be an early warning sign. It's moving away from a purely clinical view to one that incorporates the patient's own deep sense of their physical state.
That's actually really empowering. So wrapping this all up, if we boil down this whole idea of focusing on what to stop, what's the main takeaway?
I think it comes down to discernment. Not perfection, because that's impossible, but discernment.
Fascinating.
Meaning developing the ability to sift through all the information, all the advice, all the shoulds and shouldn'ts, and figure out what's actually evidence-based, what applies to you, and what truly matters for your health and your baby's health. Critically evaluating, not just blindly following.
And recognizing that sometimes taking something out of your routine, stopping a habit, avoiding an exposure can be far more beneficial than adding one more thing in.
Precisely. It's about intentional subtraction sometimes, not just addition.
And remembering every pregnancy is different.
Absolutely fundamental. Your journey is unique. The goal is informed, intentional choices that feel right for you, based on good information and, yes, that internal compass too.
That's a really strong note to end on. So maybe for everyone listening, a thought to ponder. What outdated advice have you maybe heard or even followed? And how does knowing more about the why behind current recommendations change how you approach your own health choices, pregnancy or otherwise? Food for thought. Thanks for this deep dive.
My pleasure. It's such an important topic.